Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you guys that are here on campus with us. Thank you to everybody that's online watching this. We are here to spend some time with DJ Swivel and go behind the beats. So let us make some serious noise for DJ Swivel.
What's up? I'm back. How's everyone doing?
All right, so we just want to kind of give you guys a little bit of heads up about what we're kind of going to do. I'm going to talk to Jordan a little bit about where he came from, where he's going, what's happening. We're going to actually jump into a song. We're actually going to break down some tracks for you guys. I know you guys are excited about that, right? So we're going to actually take some questions while we're in specific parts of the track. So if you guys could, kind of constrain the questions when we're talking about guitars to guitars or something of that nature, we want to try and keep this a little more discussion-based. But let's start off with, thanks for coming back. I mean,
Good to be here.
Yeah, it was
Every
year
year
ago. He was here talking to you
great.
guys. Why don't you just give a little brief history on, you graduated in 2005, kind of where things took off from there, where you went, how things progressed.
Yeah, so I'm sure some of you have heard this story before. I graduated 2005, and 2 days later, I moved up to New York. I started interning at one studio that I had lined up prior while I was in school here, and it didn't really work out. It was a jazz studio. I didn't really feel the vibe there. So I quit, and then a few months later, career development here actually hooked me up with Duro somehow. There was a lead for an internship, and I applied. And through some convincing and whatnot, I got the job, and I started working for him and interning during the day and assisting where I could and, cleaning toilets and doing all that. And then within the first year, I started engineering for Fabulous, who was his artist, and he owns Desert Storm Records. And that was sort of my first real client. And then from there, everything progressed and, worked with a bunch of different people, and it really all started under Duro, working with him and mixing, learning the whole trade that way. So that was...
You were working with Jay Sean and all those guys early on.
Jay Sean's still a good friend of mine, and yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff in the Def Jam building because Fab was there, and I toured with him, and we worked on the road, and so there's a lot of interesting opportunities, and then eventually got the call to work with B through a friend of mine who, I guess she needed a fill-in one day, and I happened to take the call. So I just showed up, and
it's quite a call to get, guys.
And then she kept me around for a little bit, so yeah.
Yeah, kept you around for a long while.
Yeah, a couple of years, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the work ethic. How many hours are you putting in? Where were you? Was your dedication above and beyond what you were seeing other people doing?
I mean, when I started, I remember my first week interning under Duro. It was like a 125-hour week. First day I was there 24 hours. I went home and slept for 6. I came back for 36 hours because he would mix during the day, and then he would have the studio booked with different artists. I think we had like True Life and Fab and Styles P and a few people in that week. So it was like going 24 hours a day, and I was there the whole time. So
were you primarily recording vocal?
No, that was like my first week was a 120-hour week, and I was just fetching food and cleaning the toilets and doing what you had to do. And then as things progressed, I was recording for Fab at night, assisting Duro during the day, and that went on for a few years, pretty much. Or at least the course of his album was a year, so at least a year.
How far in did you really start mixing?
The first major label mix I got was on From Nothing to Something, Fab's 4th album, and that was a year. That was 2 years after I graduated. A little less than 2 years after I graduated.
So a lot of dedication.
Yeah, well, I was assisting Duro, so I was setting up his mixes, and there was 2 songs left to do to finish the record. And so at night, I just stayed. We were at Sony Studios, and I stayed all night, and I mixed one of them. He came in the next morning. I said, "Oh, don't worry, I did it for you." He said he listened to it, and then he said, "All right, I got this." And then the next day I set up the last song, and that one he let me have. So he felt I earned that one.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That is awesome.
So
And
I
then-
felt like I was with him long enough that I could do that.
So
that I
and
felt
are you primarily mixing now?
Mostly now mixing. I try not to record anymore unless it's with a friend of mine or somebody who I'm close with, or a project that I'm really hyped about that I really like.
Right. You're also involved with the production of a lot of these clients, which is I don't want to say it's not the norm, but it's not as normal as people think, where you're able to actually contribute to the tracks, put sounds in there. Right. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my approach to mixing, if I see a hole in a track or something that an error that needs to be fixed, or just something that creatively I feel like needs to happen, I do it. It's generally nothing too crazy. It's usually replacing drums, adding like little parts, nothing that changes the record too much, but something that enhances the record. And I've sort of gotten to that point because my background was as a producer first, that when I listen to records, now I've worked with a lot of my favorite producers, I've learned how they all make records. I feel like usually when I'm contributing something, it's because it really needs it. If I feel like I'm not sure, I probably won't touch it. And that's allowed me with certain artists to be able to, add a little more to what they're doing and hopefully enhance what they're doing before it comes out. Yeah.
So let's kind of go through just a quick list in your head. Some of the producers that you were able to kind of watch that formulate from, people like Pharrell and...
Yeah, worked with Pharrell and Swiss and Kanye and oh man, like pop guys. I worked on Tiesto's records, so seeing kind of what he does and...
Just a few of the bigger names.
Yeah. But even some of the smaller producers who are just really talented and do great work. And also, from the mixing side, when you see all these great producers who are giving you records that you're mixing, or at the time when I was assisting, you kind of see how they put things together, see how how they layer their vocals and how they layer their drums and do all that. So you sort of become a bit of a sponge and apply that to your own records too. So
this is very much a handed down kind of craft. You were learning a lot of you obviously knew how to do stuff, but from those guys, you were really seeing how the glue goes together. Yeah,
if you heard the records that I made when I was here and left here, and then you heard them now, it's like night and day. And really, it just comes from experience, just spending time in the studio every day, trying new things, seeing what works, what doesn't, making a lot of mistakes to, figure out what your sound is and how it works for you. Yeah.
So let's just talk briefly about the Beyonce Jay-Z relationship. What's your relationship? Obviously your relationship with Beyonce is a little bit more in depth than it is with Jay-Z.
Right.
So maybe kind of elaborate a little bit on that whole combination.
So working with B as her main engineer, I was there every day for every part of every record
Where
on
was
that 4 albums.
Just kind of give them an idea.
Well, we were in New York. We were working at a bunch of studios, MSR, KMA when it was open, Jungle City, and we also toured. We did Australia and the UK, so we got around. But working with her, when you're in there every day, and her process is actually a really great one to me. She takes ideas from anybody. She'll have 5 producers in various rooms and different songwriters, and whoever can contribute to the record and has the best idea, that's what she uses. So she doesn't care. That's why sometimes you'll see a lot of writers on a record, because she may have one writer in another room and one in this room, and they may both contribute to the same record. So
so she's like with Jungle City, for example, obviously famous studio, well-known studio now.
We were the first clients in there.
Yeah.
Before
she books out the entire place, basically.
Yeah.
And then puts different people in different spaces.
Yeah, normally we'd have 3 rooms going on. She would cut vocals in one, and then there'd be 2 producers in the other, and Shay Taylor might have a 4th room somewhere else. He was sort of the main producer on that project. And so working on that, when you're in there every day, you get a little more freedom to be able to add drums and change things. And, when she goes home, if I feel like things should be a little bit different, I might make a change, and then in the morning she'll listen, and if she likes it, great, we keep it. If she doesn't, we go back. Whereas with Jay, I was more just in there recording, and also she's crafting everything from the inception of the production, like everything, whereas Jay's getting tracks that already work and he's sort of rapping on them. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole different
different genre,
production
different
process.
yeah.
What
Different
kind of hours? I mean, what kind of time frames were you guys working?
With me?
Yeah.
So she's a workaholic. We would do normally 14-hour days, 7 days a week. Might get a day off every couple of weeks. You know, and then there's other times where maybe she's on vacation and you get a week off, which is great.
So she's there working, and then after
she's there, she doesn't leave.
Yeah, and then after she leaves, you're still there.
Yeah, for a little bit, yeah, until I'm too tired to keep my eyes open, and then I'll go. So, yeah.
Awesome. So let's kind of move forward from there to where you're at now. Like, where's your mental game? Where do you see yourself going in the future?
So now I'm spending a lot more time just mixing, developing artists, working with. I brought a song from this artist, Rory. I don't know if any of you guys know who Rory is, but some people, a couple people. Okay, well, you're gonna find out today.
You guys are all gonna know.
He's really great, and I got involved, just as an example, involved in his project pretty early. And you know, he's a young kid, he's 18, but helping just sort of mold things a little bit, which, by the way, he doesn't need because he's just so talented. But you know, just helping on the recording side, making sure things work well. His engineer and myself, we talk a lot, and we go back and forth on how.
Yeah, maybe talk about how that came to you.
Well, so I brought a song called Cigarette Song, and my friends Day Trip in New York produced it, and they brought me in, and they said, you know, would you mix this for us? And they had no budget, and I heard the song, and I said, I'll do it for free, like, no problem. And I checked what Rory was about, and I saw what he was doing, and it just made sense. So by providing my services and doing something like that without asking for anything, he knows I'm sort of part of the team. You know, I want what he wants, which is
right. And you're kind of investing in the future of growth of him.
Yeah. So that's sort of how that one played out, and now I did his EP, Indigo Child, and now we're gonna start working on his record, like the first major label record.
Does the free mix turn into the paid gig on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you know, even on the EP, you know, you work with the artist, but I didn't do this it wasn't about the money. It was about creatively. I wanted to be a part of a great project. So I find myself doing that a little more on the things that I like, working on the things that I want to work on, as opposed to the things for a check.
So before we jump into the song, I mean, what do you, like, we all have that, you know, where we're going to be or where we want to be. I mean, do you want to move more into as a producer? Do you want to move more back into that realm of the strictly creation, move out of mixing, or are you pretty content where you're at?
Well, I love mixing, and I don't think I ever want to stop that. But I'm still writing and producing, and I spent a lot more time actually working on various tech things, like platforms, web platforms, or apps that you know, can contribute to the music industry. So there's a few things I'm working on and not ready to talk about yet, but yeah, more on the business side of you know, servicing the creatives in this business, you guys, the musicians, the producers, the artists. Yeah. Awesome.
So what Jordan and I talked about this a little bit earlier. What we're gonna do is we're actually gonna play the entire song for you guys. And we think it's kind of important because the song has a lot of different elements to it, and Jordan wants to, you know, be able to break down each one. So maybe talk a little bit about the song itself, and then we'll play it, and then we'll get into some individual track stuff.
Yeah, so the song is built around acoustic guitar. Rory is a musician, he plays guitar. Most of his music sort of revolves around that. And then, again, my friends Day Trip produced the song. I'll just let it play, and some of you guys may know it, and the ones who don't, you're in for a treat.
It's gone. It's gone. My cigarette with her, yeah. I falter every Wednesday evening. Why do you always use that word? Yeah, when you don't even know its meaning. See, I'll always be a friend. I'll always be there when the sun sets, sun sets, sun sets. But we've been gifted with the end, yeah. Who really wants to live forever, ever, 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 ever? But I can't love you right. I can't love you. I won't love you. But if you want life, I'll provide it. I'll supply you. Said I can't love you right. I can't love you. I won't love you. But if you want life, I'll provide it. I'll supply you with cigarettes. Light it up, girl. I have a problem. It's gone. Kill you, kill you, kill you, kill you. I share my cigarette and fire. Yeah. I fuck her every Wednesday evening. Yes, I'm out amongst the birds. Yeah. I won't remember what you tell me. Girl, tell me everything tonight. Yeah. I'll keep it secret. She can tell me. Girl, it's easy. I move in silence through the shade. It's no surprise that he can see me. But I can love you right. I can love you. I won't love you. But if you want life, I'll provide it. I'll supply you. And if you want me right, you can say it. I might say it. But don't you be surprised. I'm only yours tonight. That's only for tonight. I'm gonna be yours tonight.
There it is.
All right, so let's talk about, just from the beginning, obviously when they approached you, what did you get when they sent you the track?
So, I got most of what you see here. I did add a few things. The vocals were well recorded. The production was well done. Kind of everything you see here. As you could tell, the song has the reason I brought it's got a lot of dynamics. It has a lot of different parts. There's a lot to manage. And being that I sort of mixed this one on the Love, we didn't have a studio. So this was something that I literally mixed, at home in headphones. I had speakers too, but, just going through everything. And sometimes at this point, you gotta be able to work with what you're given.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about mixing in headphones. I mean, this is always something that's brought up. Can you do it? Should you do it?
I always prefer monitors and to be in a nice studio, but at this point I've become so mobile. This is my full rig. If I need to work, I can plug a great set of headphones in and good to go. I just have a duet here and my laptop and my iLock and I'm good to go. So yeah, for me, it's just a matter of being mobile and being able to move. I might be the only person who's ever mixed on a plane before, like a major label mix. I actually credited a mix to JetBlue Flight 359. It was the artist Jenna Andrews, and her A&R admin called me and was like, "What is this?" I just said, "Just put it down, please." But that's kind of what the industry has become a little bit. Sometimes if you don't have a room, you got to figure it out. So in this case, that's how we did it.
So, do you mix vocals first? Do you mix drums first? Like when you start out a song, I mean, what's your mental game there?
Yeah, it depends on the song. So why don't I just go through this here? I tend to mix top down, and I arrange the tracks in the order that I kind of want to have, hear them. So with most urban records, things that are drum heavy, I start with drums, kicks, snares, all the other elements, little percussion elements and whatnot. Then bass, and then the main instruments, the effects tracks, not the effects returns, just like, in this there's a lighter sound and some laughter and whatever. And then lead vocals, background vocals, and then I'll have my effects returns. So I'll sort of run through it now, like, these are all the drums up here, sort of down to here. And then these two tracks are bass, and then the main instrument, which is the guitar stuff. In the second verse, this was comped down. It's 6 guitars that were comped down to 1. So I did a little mix on that. Just dealing with, this was probably 100-something tracks, so sometimes you gotta, manage it. And
yeah, how much time are you spending in like the pre-prep for mixing?
It depends on how messy it is when I get it. I can't remember how long this one took. Sometimes it's perfect.
We're gonna say this was good because you can't remember it, right?
Maybe. No, I think this took a little bit of time to prep. But one of the members of Day Trip, who produced the record, I got him his first job at a studio years ago, and so he knows what I need. So I think he gave it to me in pretty good shape. Yeah, and then down here is like the outro instruments and all that stuff, the strings, and there's a Glock on there and a few other things. And then these are little sound effects tracks, and then the rest is vocals.
So let's go back up to your drum stuff. And I think one of the, like you had mentioned, especially with an urban record, I mean, how drums hit, how they feel, the energy.
So important. Drums and bass is like, in a record like this, and I don't even know if I would call this an urban record. It kind of blurs the genre lines a little bit. I don't know. What would you guys call this? Is this an urban record or? Urban, yeah, right. So but regardless, you want the drums to hit.
Have a very jungle kind of sound to them, which is they have that.
Yeah. And I mean, Rory is such a talented artist. He sings, he raps, he plays guitar. He still wants some ass in his track, but so I'm not going to mix it the way I would mix a rock record.
So can we separate those out? I mean,
yeah. So I'll play starting where the kick and the tight goes. So you get the idea. There's a lot of obviously bass and.
So in these edits, the edits that they're seeing up there, are these edits that you've done, or are these coming to you edited?
Yeah. So some of these tight goes and things like that, these are not edited. These are just me aligning things, shifting them so they all they hit the right way. Sometimes when you're layering drums, it's 1 millisecond, 2 milliseconds that make the world of difference in how they hit. So a lot of this is just going through a lot of these edits here, making sure they all line up the way they should. The rim shots and the snares, they all fit. These tracks here, let me solo them. These were tracks that I added, going back to talking about production and adding things to a record where you feel like they're needed. This is just like a, so that's 3 sounds that are layered. And it was just something to add a little accent on the second snare, or 4th snare. Just to give it a lift, give it something new, which they liked, so we kept it.
Go into a little bit of depth on that, on something, there's something new, I think is something that, as a mixer is probably one of the bigger tricks.
Well, yeah, and also I know what sound they were going for. I know what he was trying to accomplish. So adding those sounds is not me just feeling like I wanted to put something on the record. It was, this is kind of the vibe that they're looking for. And having that ambient, vocal effect, and it sort of lends itself to this type of production, this type of song, and who Rory is as an artist.
Right, and there's a lot of ambient in the track, so
yeah, lots of reverb.
Dry probably was.
Yeah, lots of reverb, and that's kind of a lot of you guys, I'm sure, listen to the new indie records and what's happening, and people are using a lot of reverb now, and as a production tool as opposed to just an effect, like a natural sounding effect. Now it's become a tool to make it sound washy and distant and what.
So, and I noticed there's not a lot of plugins on there.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see, like, with the drums, obviously with the kick. So let's start with the kick and just, I'll pull up some of these things. One of my favorite plugins, by the way, the CLA drums are great. And just a little compression. There's not a whole lot going on. And then this kick, this is just a key that I think I have the bass keyed through the kick. So it'll compress and whatnot.
Yeah, so you're ducking a little bit whenever the kick's hitting the bass. They're not.
And with the Tychos, I don't have a lot going on them. There's a little bit of another one of my favorite plugins, the Vitalizer. Just a little spread, a little bit of mid-range and bass stuff there, or low mid stuff. And again, a little compression. Not a whole lot. If you go through this session, the bass tracks are highly processed, but mostly everything else, other than the vocals, is pretty sparse. When you're mixing a record, if the producer has done a good job of producing the record, you shouldn't have to do a whole lot. You shouldn't have to put plugins on everything. A lot of times it's just balance, level, pan, finding space for every sound, and it doesn't necessarily mean changing the sound. And so you'll see that. Obviously, the vocals need a lot of, a little bit of tune, a little bit of de-essing, compression, and whatnot. I mean, let's get
go
to the
back
vocals,
to the bass.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be a little bit of work for you.
Yeah. So the bass, really, because the intro, I wanted the bass to have some top end to it as well as the low end. So let me see if I can bypass all these real quick. So you hear it's, pretty dull, and when you listen to it, it doesn't really cut through. And it's an upright bass, so you kind of want to have that fret noise.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right? So that's what both the basses are doing. Somewhat similar. What do we have here? This is just a lo-fi little distortion effect, and a little bit of compression, not a whole lot. Again, keyed from that kick drum up here. So every time the kick hits, the bass is going to duck. This is just a bright, adds like some saturation, a little brightness on the top. And this adds a little attack, the transient modulator, another plugin that I love to use on drums. If you're not getting the attack you want, sometimes it's not a compression thing, you just want to add a little, click at the top of your drum. So I like that on bass too. And then this is a little R bass, which just adds some sub to it.
What frequency are you at? You're at one.
Yeah, and I'm not. And then this is some corrective EQ, just pulling out some of the low mids and again boosting.
So maybe if we could bypass them and then unbypass them again, so you guys can hear, because this is a substantial difference in a sound.
Yeah.
From what they gave him to what it actually needed to be in the track and how it interacts with the drum.
Yeah.
Well, see, I'll always be a friend. I'll always be there when the sun sets, but we've been gifted with the end. Yeah. Who really wants to
Now you can hear the fret noise and the top end and all that.
Yeah, it's an incredible difference there.
So that's the bass. And then
The
really,
track below, it's the same thing, or?
yeah, pretty similar. It's a different bass. Let's hear it. It's a distorted. So this is more run through an amp. I think I have an amp plugin on there. Lo-fi. Oh no, I don't. just a little spread on it. The plugins are doing a little something different on everything, but it's sort of using similar effects.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting how, you know, you come in with that first bass sound, which is conservative, and then it goes to the more aggressive. It's building, it's moving throughout the song.
Right. And then, so the bass really has the most processing on anything, and it just shows sort of sometimes the importance of what a bass can, you know, bring to a song. And then we get into the guitar, which is really the main instrument, and it was recorded pretty well. Let me just see here. The vitalizer here is just a little spread here on this stereo knob, and a little bit of compression and sort of low-end stuff.
Was this a mono track first, and then the plugin made it stereo, or was it stereo?
No, they gave me a stereo comp.
Awesome.
So you work with what you get, right? So it's actually not doing a whole lot.
How much of the imagers are you using in your mixing?
I love using the imager because rather than doing for example, in vocals, I'll use it a lot. I don't like to pan things 100% left and right. So if you have a stack of 8 or 10 whatever it is, 4 vocals, sometimes I'll see people do 100, and that can sometimes work. I like to do things like 40, 80, 60, and then I'll add a spread on it. So it sort of carves out a hole, but you don't get sometimes it can be jarring when there's too much separation. So that's why I like to use spreader tools as opposed to...
So kind of brings up a really good point of the difference of listening to a song in headphones versus, you know, in speakers. I mean, even, you know, when you started a decade ago when you were mixing, people were still primarily listening to a lot of music on speakers, moving into the earbuds and the absolute left-right. I think that panning thing is definitely changing.
Yeah. Obviously, when you're in headphones, it can be definitely, when you have 2 vocals, every little difference you're going to hear. So sometimes having that middle, just a little bit in the middle, makes it, I find it's a little smoother.
Are you in the, you know, I know this was mixed, you know, at home and on headphones, but when you're in a regular studio and you're in a main room, how often are you referencing your headphones?
And usually, if I know the room, usually never. If I don't know the room, I'll throw them on. I'm normally on Sennheiser 650s, which sound great. And it really just depends on where I am, what I'm used to. If sometimes I was in a new room in Toronto a few months ago. I wasn't familiar with the room, so I made sure I had my headphones and could pull them up and go through some of the songs that I've mixed before, or some songs that I've heard 1,000 times and know, and reference. So referencing is obviously really important when you're going through a record, and
awesome.
You want it to feel like something else.
What about the space that's on that acoustic?
So I don't have any reverb on it. And the reason I don't have reverb on it is because there's so much reverb going on in the rest of the record. And in the intro here, even if you listen to the vocal, it's a dry vocal. We wanted to keep it sort of dead and dry and sort of really in your face. And then as the song progresses, more reverb is introduced with vocals and other effects. So really dry.
It's gone. It's gone.
And then there's a little sound effect somewhere.
So let's field like a couple of questions before we get, you know, moving down the food chain. So
yeah, if there's any questions
drums,
about what I'm
doing. Kind of hit bass and a little bit of this acoustic guitar. We got any questions out there from you guys on any of this stuff? I got one way back over there. Orange shirt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, she's coming to you with a mic.
Hello, what's up?
Hey.
My name is Klaus, by the way. And one of the things that is making me curious is I often have problems finding the right frequency on acoustic guitars to get attack, but not to sound annoying on the ear or like too strong. Can you talk a little bit about how would you EQ an acoustic guitar, or what you do in this special occasion, if you did anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I always say this is every song is different, and it really depends on what the acoustic guitar sounds like. If it's recorded really poorly, you may have a lot of work. I've had acoustic guitars that are just a ton of work to, if they're not recorded in the right room, or they have some twanginess that you don't like. So it's really hard to say just because every song is different. On this one, I'm not doing a whole lot of EQ. If I take it off and you listen, it's a little thinner. It doesn't have some of the low mid stuff, but it's not a huge difference. Rory's engineer, sort of good testament to what he does. You know, he's a great engineer. So having good recording is obviously really important. I'll put it back on.
Do you feel like you're getting, as you know, more people are recording at home, do you feel like the quality of the recordings are getting worse? Or do you feel like that's...
No, I think kind of the opposite. I feel like things are getting better. I feel like now that it's so accessible, you have people who are really learning, and it's so much harder to push through all the noise and make it. So when it gets to me, it's usually done fairly well. You still get things that aren't recorded great every once in a while, but that's kind of what you do. You deal with it.
What do you feel like they're going to be seeing early on?
I guess, well, on your own records, it'll be obviously what you learn here, and hopefully when some of you guys are interning and doing all that, hopefully you'll be learning how to make sure that you don't have to deal with a poorly recorded record. As a mixer, being a mixer made me a much better producer, because when I had to mix a record and figure out what are the problems in it and think with that sort of side of my brain, it allowed me to fix problems in the production sooner, so that when it does get to a mix, I know I'm not going to run into an issue here. So yeah, mixing, just figuring things out, you sort of learn what you need, what you don't need. And
About another question right here. Hang on, they'll come to you with the mic. Juan's coming at you.
Hi.
hey,
I'm Germany. Listening to the song, like the guitar and his voice are like both so crisp, but just neither of them are piercing. And I have trouble with that. Like, do you have a workaround or a go-to method for when your guitar and your vocals are occupying the same space, but you really need them to be distinct?
usually it's sort of carving out the important parts of a vocal, or where a vocal and a guitar are going to overlap. Sometimes it's pulling a few frequencies out of the guitar that you want to push in a vocal, and it sort of adds a little separation. In something like this where there's no reverb or anything, they kind of are sitting right on top of each other. The beauty is in the intro, there's no drums or anything filling up that space. So you do have a lot of room to have a vocal and a guitar. If I had a million drums and things on top, that, like later on in the record, that's why you need to add some reverb and other things to find a new space for a vocal. As far as EQ, sometimes it's like pushing one EQ or one frequency in one track and pulling that same frequency out of the other track. So, you know, it makes a little space. And it doesn't have to be, you know, large amounts of frequencies, but sometimes just enough in the low mids and in the top end to create enough separation, right?
Anybody got a drum and bass question? Yeah, we'll go right there. Juan, right to, yep, right there. Gray sweater.
Hello, I'm Bobby. I just had a question about like your process and layering the drums, especially with the kick. Like, can you I guess show how you would go about doing that, and what you can boost and what you can cut to make them work together?
Yeah, so the kick is just one track of kick on this, right? And it's a really full, low kick, a lot of body. And there's also, if you hear, there's like a click on the top of it, so that it has that high end just to cut through. And the taikos sort of play along with it. Hold on. I got the mic in my hand, so it's hard to... maybe the lapel mic would have been the right idea. So on these taikos, there's some low end, but the like the low mid and the punchy stuff is sort of pulled out of them, so it leaves room for the kick to really sort of fill that space. And the taikos are more about the ambient noise on it anyways, less about the low end. The only one that's really got some low end is this, there's a group, is this first one, which has a tail on it, you know, to fill up more space. And then once you add the snares, the song is more about the kick. The snares are really just there to add a little top, and it's not really too snare heavy until you get to the second verse. And then you have like the really loud snare that cuts through. And a lot of this is, you know, sometimes hard to describe because every song is different. So it's notching out little EQs and just finding space. You don't want two things that are muddying up the, you know, sometimes a little filter on the low end is enough to create
And I think you brought up a really good point about how well produced this is, that the instrumentation gives you the space as a mixer to have room to do stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The difference between a well-produced record and a poorly produced record comes down to picking sounds and everything, layering. You kind of got to give the producer credit here. It's not always about the mixer. Sometimes you get a great sounding record, and other times you have a record that requires a lot of work. So sometimes hard for me. Last year was the same, answering these questions specifically about, for example, what this gentleman was saying about guitar and vocal. Every song is different. Every guitar is different. So you have to just deal with it on a case-by-case basis, and it's more about training your ear, doing it 1,000 times and learning.
Do you think there's a lot of the osmosis of, you know, I mean, think about how many acoustic guitars after the last decade, how many, you know, acoustic guitars you've touched. I mean, there has to be some of the osmosis of the repeated, okay, that frequency is one that you like to go to in acoustic, so that's very specific to the mixer.
Right. For me, I found it's been more ear training. So now when I listen to a guitar, I can say, oh, that's that annoying frequency that bothers me, and I know what that frequency is. Whereas when I was first mixing, I just had to sort of take an EQ and sort of filter through all the frequencies and wait till it jumped out at me.
So the ear training, that's what you're talking about, the years of actually sweeping.
The years of sweeping an EQ and learning like what 500 hertz sounds like and what 10K sounds like. And knowing that when I'm mixing something, oh, that's what's bothering me, and I can go to it right away, right?
So let's move on in the track a little bit. The second verse guitars, you know, where the track starts to kind of become more aggressive. I think that's kind of a good spot to move into.
Okay, so now you're not going to see everything that's going on here, but it was 6 guitars that had, I had a CLA guitar on it and just an R compressor, and this guitar had an amp and a tape saturation and also a CLA guitar. So these were edited. As you can see, there's a lot of like chops and edits to make sure that things land on the right spaces and pulling little sections out that don't need to be there. And because I was dealing with a track that had, or a song that had hundreds of tracks, and I'm doing it at home, just track management. So once I got the guitars in a good place where everybody was happy, then I just comped it down to this one sound. But this is actually 6 guitars here if you listen. And you can hear the amp noise and all that. Part of that was part of the recording. They did a lot of live recording, and some of those are programmed guitars, just played on a keyboard. So
do you feel like this could obviously, if you push that in the mix, this could kind of change almost the whole feel of the mix, almost the demographic of the mix?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me just listen to the section.
I shared my cigarette and fire. I fucked her every Wednesday.
So really the guitar is taking up a lot of space in that and really, changing the dynamic of what's going on.
And you mentioned you felt this artist was almost more alternative than R&B, and that kind of definitely helps along that line.
Yeah, absolutely. if you listen to his EP, Indigo Child, there's a lot of different sounds. It's a very eclectic type of record, lots of guitar-driven stuff, lots of reverb and use of sort of ambience and things like that. I wouldn't call him necessarily an urban artist. I wouldn't want to put him, I don't think urban radio would be playing him the same way maybe a rhythmic station might. So, yeah, he's a unique sort of individual.
It is. I mean, I think it's a good blend, and I think it's kind of again a testament to you guys and putting something together that has the elements from different places.
Right.
Let's move down. Do you have vocals?
So these are some other guitars. So these guitars in the break, these have reverbs right on the track with a pretty heavy mix. So you can hear it adds a lot of space and which in that section is sort of needed. You want to have that lull in the track where the drums drop out and you know, just take it to a new place.
Sure, the ambient part. So let's real quickly jump down to the vocals because I want to get on to the Q&A section. But let's talk about the vocals and clip gaining versus automation and your reasonings, obviously, you know, for doing what you did on this particular track.
Okay, so going through the vocals, this is sort of what we have here. As you can see, there's a lot of edits and chops, and if you zoom in, you know, there's clip gain on a lot of these, like single words, right? This is, you know, just one little syllable. And normally what I would do if I was in a studio is I would have automated faders, and I would just sort of ride the vocal as I see fit, making sure every sort of syllable is the same volume and hits the same way and words aren't dropping out or being too loud. But in this scenario where I don't have a board to work off, working in Pro Tools 10, I have clip gain where I can very easily just chop out a section, fade it up. You'll see these little fades. You know, once the level's pushed up, there's little fades there that smooths everything out. And that's how I find when I am mobile, I handle leveling out vocals that way. There's still obviously some compression.
Yeah, let's just quickly look at the vocal chain.
So there's a little bit of tune, not too much. I usually start with a de-esser just to get rid of some of the crap that you don't want. And then I add the stuff that I do want later. So then, you know, filter out the low end on the vocal, a little bit of compression. There's a gate on it. Let's see. Oh.
Yeah, I fucked her every Wednesday evening.
And this vocal.
Why do you always use that word? Yeah.
It's a good song, right?
You don't even know its meaning.
So there's just a little bit of brightness on it. A little more compression. And then this is sort of my secret weapon. This is one of the tricks. I really love what the Vitalizer does to the top of a song. So this little knob here, I think it's at, 18K, which in most cases you're not going to hear, but you're going to feel it. It's going to cut through a little bit, and it's not going to occupy a whole lot of, you know, headroom or anything like that. It's just going to cut through. And sort of that's what the Vitalizer does for me.
Every Wednesday evening. Why do you always use that word?
Maybe if we could bypass the chain just real quick and take a listen and then see what you got.
Yeah, I fucked her every Wednesday evening.
And obviously there's a lot of you know, delay and reverb and
yeah, when you don't even know its meaning. Well, see, I'll always be a friend.
and now it cuts through. And there's one final de-esser that I have at the end, which is just catching the little things that the first one missed.
Awesome.
So it's light. And then as far as like the effects,
I shared my cigarette with her.
this is a reverb,
I fuck
obviously.
her every Wednesday evening.
There's some automation on it. I think towards the end of the record, it sort of floats away. So I have some automation there. This is another reverb. It just adds a little bit of high sort of brightness to
I
it.
fucked her every Wednesday evening. Wow.
So you can't really hear what it does too much, but it pushes a little bit of space and it's a brighter reverb, so it's nice. And then there's a little delay. I think this just has some sends on it, so it'll cut in on various words and things like that. Let's see if we can find it here. Level. Or maybe it's a mute. There's some automation on that somewhere. I'm sure we can look for it for a while, but. And then I have a little doubler on it, which just adds a little space. So there's not a whole lot. Well, there is a lot of effects, but they're all used in moderation, nothing too crazy. And
Yeah, and I mean, again, you wanted the vocal to kind of sit in the track.
right.
Yeah.
See, I can't really tell if you can hear what's going on, but.
Why do you always use that word?
So once you add that doubler, it adds a little space on it.
Don't even know
It might be hard to hear.
All right, well, let's move into our Q&A section. So what we'd like to do is go all the way to the back, and we've got some people that are online that have some questions. We're going to do a couple of those. We're going to not do that. We're going to do it up here. Okay, so if you can put your hand up right here in the middle one, and then we'll move over that way.
Maybe it's easier if everyone lines up, so you don't have to run around with the mic.
Go ahead.
How you doing, Swivel? What's your go-to compressor for vocals, guitars, whatever? What's your go-to compressor? I've seen the SSL up.
Yeah, I like using the SSL. I like the RVox a lot. But I sort of switch it up. It really just depends. My go-to channel strip is the SSL channel strip. Although I do find more and more lately I've been using the, actually the Avid one is really good. I like that one, yeah. Sorry, I can't yell it. I mean, it depends on what I need from it. Sometimes I'm using it to crush a sound, and sometimes it's just used for a little bit of controlling a vocal, or, it really just depends on what it is, yeah.
Okay, we'll go over here.
Hi, my name is Sam.
Hey.
Hey, I know earlier you were saying that, if producers know kind of what they're doing, that it won't take much from you as far as just throwing a bunch of plugins on there.
Right.
What are some, for producers, and, this producer kind of knows you, like you said, so they know how you want things delivered. So what about a producer that you don't work with often? What are some things that you kind of want as far as in the delivery process that?
So what I meant is how they get me files. For me, I like having everything named properly, and I like having everything in a certain order. I like the drums at the top. I like my bass next, the instruments after that, and then the vocals at the bottom. For me, it's more just session management. They know what I need, so that they're basically saving me a few hours of work by doing it and making it, easy to read. The worst is when you get a session, it's just audio 1, audio 2, audio 3, audio 4. Then you got to go in and listen to everything, name it, and, can take some time.
Awesome, he's got the mic here in the middle.
Hello.
Get one over there.
When you're running your kick to duck your bass,
Yeah.
do you have like a set dB of gain reduction you're looking for? Usually to start with, because there's a lot of variables in how you run that compressor.
Yeah, of course.
You can't figure
It
out
really
too
just
much.
depends. Obviously, if you're working on a sort of EDM record and you want to have a side chain that's really pumping, you want a lot more gain reduction. In this case, it's not that. It's just so that the bass doesn't get in the way of the kick. So I'm probably getting, we can check right here. It's probably not more than 3 or 4 dB is my best guess. Let's see. Where's the bass? So I'm getting like 6 dB of compression there. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Let's, Juan, why don't you, right there? Yep.
Hey, what's up? Thank you for
What's up?
coming. Yo, yeah. Had a quick question. Actually, 2, if we have time.
Sure.
I got on your website like a long time ago. I remember it was a drum kit on there.
Oh, did you find the hidden drum kits? You're
Yes,
like one
sir.
of the 10 people who found it.
Nice. I use it a lot, actually.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you're doing like any more of those or like a bigger.
That was like an Easter egg when I was designing my website. We thought it would be fun to have little hidden sections where you could get little goodies. Maybe I'll change. It's a good idea. Maybe I'll go back and have them change the drums, do like a version 2 or something like that.
Yeah, I need that.
So, okay. I got you. Email me.
All right, cool. Yep.
Okay, let's go blue shirt right in the back there.
Hello.
What's
Thanks
up?
for being here, by the way.
I would never not be here.
My question is pretty much, how long did it take you to be comfortable with mixing with headphones, or was it something that just happened real quick? And how did you get to that point?
Well, for me, it was first of all finding great headphones that, like I could never mix on. I'm not even gonna name. Anyways, but having a great pair of headphones, and you probably know what I'm talking about. They're very fashionable.
Made somebody $1 billion.
A few, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I can mix on anything once I'm used to it. If you learn how a record sounds on a new set of speakers or a new room, that's why it's important to reference other songs. So if you know what, and oddly enough, a lot of what I will reference sometimes is Dr. Dre mixes, because I think he has great mixes, and he's one of the people I look up to. When I know what in the club is supposed to sound like wherever I go. So if I listen in a new set of speakers or whatever, I can reference that and say, okay, if that's the sound I'm going for, now I just cross-reference to my mix and make sure that it's hitting the same way, that it cuts through the same way, that the imaging is similar, right?
Absolutely, right here.
Yeah, when you mix with a kick and a bass, right?
Yeah.
What if when you use side chaining to split them out?
Yeah.
But when that's not doing too much of splitting out for the confliction, right? How do you do it with the EQ, like high pass filter and stuff like that? How do you use them?
Well, why wouldn't I'll ask you a question. Why wouldn't the side chaining split it enough? Maybe you need to have more gain reduction. And going back to the EQ thing, sometimes you need both, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not always an EQ to make it stand out from the kick. If we're talking about the bass here, sometimes it's just to make the bass sound more interesting in the record. Sometimes it's a little bit of both. It's really hard to answer that just because every song is so different.
Yeah.
If you can't get it on sidechain, then try what I said before, pushing the EQ like one frequency in one sound and then ducking it in the other sound.
Kick and a bass?
Well, whichever sound you want. If you want to push one frequency in the kick, then pull it out of the bass, right?
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll go over to the brown shirt on the edge over there. Had your hand up forever.
How you doing? My name is Jeremy Lockett. I'm in the recording arts program.
Hey.
I noticed when you were going through the tracks that you had some effects that were on there that are not, presets to Pro Tools. So how do you go about purchasing software, instruments, and effects? How do you go about choosing what you want to use for your DAWs?
I mean, I've accumulated plugins over the years. Once you buy Waves, you have it, and those plugins don't really change a whole lot. They add a few new ones, but I've been collecting plugins for 10 years now, so I pretty much have a set of things that I like to use that I'm comfortable with. Although it might be time to pick up some UAD stuff. I don't really use that, but they sound great. So
some good time to do.
Yeah.
We'll go up here, right here with the red shirt. Juan's coming to you.
How you doing? I'm Daniel. Quick question. I know a lot of people in here, they spend hours and days. I'm right here in front of you.
Oh, I'm plug-in. Okay. I didn't see anyone standing. I was like, nobody's standing up.
My bad. But I know some of us, we spend hours mixing the same project, sometimes days.
Right.
But when do you feel like you're that you have your final mix that, okay, I'm not touching it anymore, it's fine how it is?
A mix is never done. I could sit and mix a record for 10 days and I'm gonna find something new. Sometimes you just have to pull the trigger and say, all right, it's ready to go. Sometimes there's a deadline. I know when it's not done, and I know when it hits that threshold of I'm happy with it. But even after I'm happy with it, I could probably spend another 5 hours going through and finding little things that most people probably won't pay attention to, but I would, right? So you know when it's done, but know that it's never entirely done. Sometimes you just have to let it go. Yeah.
Juan will hit her right there.
Hello, how you doing? My name is
Good.
Kai. I had a question pretty much about like ear fatigue, and I was wondering, are you more prone to it when you start with the kick? Because you said that's kind of like where you usually start, depending on your track. And also, what do you do to combat that?
To compensate for ear fatigue?
My microphone on. Hello? Okay, I'm back. No, to pretty much, how do you, what are some steps that you refresh from like ear fatigue and stuff like,
I go eat. I take a break. Yeah, so you don't want to listen too loud. I try to, when I'm mixing drums, sometimes if I'm in a studio with big speakers, sometimes I'll listen loud just to feel them. But that only takes a few minutes, and then I'll get back to the rest, and I'm in near fields that aren't too loud. So.
Cool. It's all you.
I don't know the guy's name, but when you started working with him, what did you
Rory.
see? Rory? What did you see that made you want to work with him?
Go look up Rory.
Okay.
And tell me you wouldn't want to work with him. He's just like, some of you guys know who Rory is, right? Why do he's very unique. Right? He's just a unique artist. He's got his own identity. He's doing his own thing, and that inspires me. So that made me want to be a part of it and sort of contribute. Yeah.
So you would say the fact that he has no type of real genre.
It's not even that. It's just some artists have that X factor that is hard to put a finger on. But when I met him, like he just has the most amazing personality, and you could tell like he's born to be a star. So, and that is like refreshing and inspiring. So that made me like, I'll help him out as much as I can. I would do anything for that kid,
It's all you with the suit.
How you doing? When you first graduated, how did you network with people like Fab and Beyonce? Were you going out of your way, or did you let your work speak for itself?
Well, with Fab, because I interned for Duro, I was, fetching food, and I was sort of the GA around the studio, and he was there, and I would be in the lounge watching TV maybe while he's recording, and he'd come out, and we would just like begin to have a rapport. We would talk, and when it came time to record his record, he needed somebody to do it. I was kind of there, and Duro gave me a shot, and Fab and I were already cool. We, had already built a good relationship, and we can joke around, and, so, and with B, again, once you get in the room, it's just a matter of being able to talk to somebody. They're just normal people, and not be weird about it, and,
Not slip them tapes every minute.
Yeah.
We'll go right back there, right behind you.
Yes. Hello. How are you doing?
Good.
My name's Ahmed Adames. I'm from San Antonio, Texas.
What's
I just had a question about a relationship, the chemistry between the engineer and the artist. Like, how important do you think it is? Do you think you have more freedom to add in your own sounds and effects, or is it always like a professional?
It's super important, and it really depends. Sometimes you have to build that. So I don't go out of my way to add things to a record if I feel like I'm not in a position to have that sort of freedom. With Rory, he's a young artist, and he's so talented, but he also acknowledges where other people, where their talents lie. So he trusts me that if I'm doing something, and that doesn't mean he has to keep it, or he will keep it at all. At the end of the day, he's still an artist, like through and through. But I'm comfortable enough that if I add something, and I'll send him 2 versions. I'll say, here's one with and here's one without. What do you like better? And if he likes the original without, then that's what we go with, right? I'm not pushing anything. It's just, hey, here's an idea. What do you think? Yeah.
Cool. One.
Your mix with all your plugins bypassed and then with it on. Cool. Dry mix versus wet mix.
Wait, first of all, where are you?
I'm standing
He's back there.
Oh, I can't see because the lights are crazy.
Oh, it's all good, bro.
Wait, are you asking to hear that?
Yeah, I just want to hear your dry mix versus.
Okay, I mean that might take a minute to go because there's automation.
Yeah, we're not gonna have time for him because he's got to run. Yeah,
I'm sure I can probably find like the original demo in there somewhere or something like that.
That'd be awesome.
Try and get to it at the end.
Yep, he's coming to you.
How you doing, OP?
What's up? Long Island, New York?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The question is, you was ready to, when you heard the Rory's, when you was introduced to Rory, you were ready to work with him, but where was your mentality at before you started mixing this song? Like, what did you do to prepare yourself? Like, all right, it's mix time, I'm going in. What did you do to, like?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Just send me the record.
All right.
But I had heard the record because I was friends with the producers who said, we really want you to do something to this. I didn't know who Rory was. I checked his stuff out and I said, absolutely, let's do it.
Cool. Let's do the blue shirt right behind you.
Hi, how you doing? Sorry. How you doing? My name is Shimeon. I start music production next week. I just have a quick question for you. When you did the vocals, how long do you normally take when it comes to mixing and
Mixing
mastering
vocals?
Vocals, yes.
Usually vocals, I find they take a little longer than the track because getting a vocal to sit perfectly is something I'm still trying to perfect, and I'm always trying to get better and learn more. Vocals are a tricky thing because they're really the most important part of a record, making sure that they stand out and do what they're supposed to do, but also blend with the track. So I can't really say how much time because, like I said, every song is different, but sometimes I get a song done in a few hours and sometimes it's a whole day. So, with changes the next day and whatever.
Awesome.
So it really varies, yeah.
We are going to, unfortunately, have to wrap this up. And so let's give Jordan a big round of applause. Thank him for his
I'll be
time.
outside later, so if you have other questions, you can ask him.
Jordan will answer some questions. We actually have to clear out of here, but Jordan will answer some questions probably right out back a little bit. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Just a reminder too that DJ Swivel will be doing a meet and greet in the Full Sail Library on Friday from 12 to 1. So he will be doing a meet and greet in the Full Sail Library on Friday from 12 to 1.
Oh, I didn't know. Great. Okay. I'll still be outside though. So.
Yes, he's still outside.